Hi, everybody, and welcome to Pod Stallions. I am Brian, and with me, as always, is my brother in watching dirty movies through scrambled cable signals, Jason Lindsay.
That's me. That's what I do.
And we are joined by a guest that needs no introduction to this show, but I will do it anyways. Former famous Munsters editor and director of In Search of Darkness 1, 2, and 3, David Weiner. How you doing, David?
Hey, guys. Hang on one second. I just almost have the image here. Hang on. It's just coming through. Something's going it's hard to tell. I'm going to have to come back to the television and look through the fuzz.
Yeah. I actually watched Amityville Horror 2 through a scrambled cable signal. The entire film.
And that one's arguably the most perverted of the bunch because that's got lots of incest going in that one.
It was hard to see. So we're here this week to talk. It's October, and we're here this week to talk about the Munsters. Perhaps you've heard of them. But before we do that, I know, Jason, you have a shout out to go for.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a minute and do a quick shout out to our old pal, Rockford J, who is a longtime listener. We mostly chat with him through, Instant Message or Facebook Messenger and stuff. So we don't really ever talk, but he's been going through some stuff recently that involves, upending his life in, his home and everything he's got. And so he's kind of pulling
moving sucks when you're a collector.
God. Stuff he has. And so I came home yesterday to a lovely gift box filled with some ephemera, a couple of Queen T-shirts, a little container of some little spacemen figures, a couple of wax packs of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and Gremlins, I think. The Starlog scrapbook, volume 2. And I'll tell you something. I sat and looked through this scrapbook, and it was as if I haven't seen this scrapbook in 40 years. And with each flip of the page, I knew the entire magazine.
Yeah.
I was right back, right?
Yeah.
Every image and what was coming and what was going to be said in the caption below it. It was just wild. And I realized that for 1982, the amount of Doctor Who stuff that was in here and things that were like the TV version of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, like this is part of the reason that I gravitated toward this magazine, because it was they did have a far reach in the geek stuff that they talked about. But then the other couple of them are just like, Star Wars, the making of the world's greatest space adventure, the full movie from Screen Superstar. Like everybody had that one. There's another one that's Screen Monsters, the making of King Kong from outer space, Star Wars from Darth Vader and Beyond, Superman 2 and the Kryptonian Fiends. The best one is Star Blazer.
I remember that.
Remember Star Blazer?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is November of 1984. Star Trek Enterprise 2 is on the cover.
It was sort of like the Cracked of, science fiction magazines.
Yeah. Kirk talks about Star Trek 4 and his new adventure. There's an interview with Shatner in here. Indiana Jones, what's next after Temple of Doom? Blah, 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 blah. And, of course, my favorite is the spread up front about Sheena and, how those movies are going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the Dune section, there's a really risque photo. A shirtless Kyle MacLachlan standing over a sheer shirtless, almost Sean Young, big wide spread on Dune, and it says something about it being, possibly the biggest movie of the year. Let's see what it says.
It was not.
It might be. Oh, I was optimistic.
Yeah.
Well, they had to sexify it up. They had to make it like sexy and appealing to people who don't get.
And they did that with Sting and his metal briefs.
Exactly.
Yeah, but they just had the perfect quote. It was like, could it be? Here we go.
The Harkonnen Speedo, by the way.
Currently,
yeah, I just saw them in the Venture Brothers. I never noticed that.
Currently,
but I was watching it today, and the clones are wearing it. Sorry, Jason.
The music is being recorded in Vienna by the rock group Toto. David Lynch and the De Laurentiis Company plan to begin shooting the next 2 Dune films, Dune Messiah and Children of Dune, back-to-back early next year. With the success of Dune, can film versions of previously unfilmable SF classics like Stranger in a Strange Land and The Stars, My Destination be far behind? We'll see.
Yes.
Yes,
They are
very
far behind. They still haven't happened.
But thankfully, we got Battlefield Earth.
Yeah. I love that you can just tell when these things were written, like the optimism. Oh, and the next year they're definitely going to do the Foundation trilogy. I mean, now that all this space stuff is happening, everybody.
I want to interject and say I don't know Rockford J personally, but he is a pal online. He's a fellow geek.
Oh, a kindred spirit, absolutely.
He's absolutely enthusiastic about everything I do on It Came From Blog, and we have our Seeker's super secret spot on Facebook, and he's always active and on that, and you can just tell the stuff that he does is as passionate as we are about the stuff that we do. And so shout out Rockford J.
Yeah, he really gets it, and he loves it, and he sees the good in everything, and he knows about a lot of stuff. He really does. So thank you, Rockford J. I think all 3 of us are saying thank you for listening. We appreciate your efforts, and I appreciate it coming home to a nice gift basket on the doorstep. So thank you for that.
That's awesome. Before we get into our subject today, too, David, I wanted to talk to you about the 3rd installment of In Search of Darkness. This is exciting to me. Even if we weren't friends, I would be a big fan of these. The number one reason I like these is most documentaries, they try to adhere to a theater time, and I'm always left thinking that could have been longer. I wish that was longer. I was just watching one on 42nd Street Cinemas, and it's 90 minutes, and I wish that movie was 3 hours long. But I don't have to wish that with the In Search of series, which you also have In Search of Tomorrow, because they generally are about 4 hours long, and I just applaud that.
Well, thanks. Thank you.
What are you covering in part 3? Because the 80s are so crazy with horror.
Well, In Search of Darkness Part 1, they're all 4.5 hours, and In Search of Darkness Part 3 is the longest In Search of Darkness, and we're now over 5 hours long.
Wow.
And that is an absolute direct response to the encouragement of the fans and the backers who've said they could watch this stuff 24/7. And when we did In Search of Darkness Part 1, it was really the heavy hitters of horror, with some eclectic titles mixed in. And when we got an opportunity to do part 2, we tried to expand to more international material and much more sort of eclectic titles that the hardcore horror fans would really recognize. And I didn't know I was going to do a part 3 until the response to part 2 was so positive. And so here we are at part 3. It's the final installment of the In Search of Darkness trilogy when it comes to 80s movies. And so this is essentially the when you go and walk into that video store, into the horror section, and you go to the furthest dusty corner with all those insane, amazing exploitation cover art staring at you, this is what we're at the point of the journey where we're doing all the shot on video, direct to video, a lot of the but also a lot of the theatrical stuff that just we didn't get to cover yet. So you would think by now we would have talked about Serpent and the Rainbow or Monkey Shines, George Romero.
Wow. Yeah.
And Wes Craven, even Deadly Friend, Wes Craven. But The Hand, Oliver Stone's first film with Michael Caine. Jaws: The Revenge.
I just watched that last week.
The Hand or Jaws: Revenge?
Jaws: Revenge. I tried. I got exactly where I always get, and I turned it off.
Oh, you didn't get to when the shark roars. That's like
no. But mind you, in my defense, I had been watching Jaws 3, and the disc also included Jaws 4, so I just started again. but I tapped out. I can't stand Jaws 4.
Understandable, but it's actually very cool because Lance Guest, who is the star of Jaws 4, was happy to talk all about why that movie ended up being the movie that it is, and that it started out as something that he thought was great and and a good script. And I'll let him tell the tale in Search of Darkness Part 3. But as many a Hollywood production goes, when it's about to start, things change radically, and then you're stuck. And then you're moping because the shark isn't working. So it was quite an experience for him. But so we're covering 79 titles this time around, and it's got a lot of international stuff. We also talk about, Brian, I think you'll appreciate this. We dive a little bit into a lot of Canadian titles, and we talk about Canucksploitation.
Yeah, the tax breaks that you got to make terrible movies in Canada.
That's right. Late 70s, early 80s, there was incentive to make lots of, from David Cronenberg on down, to make these amazing indie horror films because they had the money to do it and the tax incentives.
So we're talking like Visiting Hours and Prom Night and
Prom Night and Death Ship and the Gates, Rock and Roll Nightmare. The Cronenberg oeuvre, all that stuff like that. And there's lots to chew on this time around. We have 50 new interviews. We bring 20 of our favorites back for more material that we never have seen or heard before. Because when I sat down with everybody, I sat down with everyone for 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours. And it's just the ultimate celebration. And it's really fun. It's got the same team that did In Search of Part 1 and Search of Darkness Part 1 and Part 2 in terms of, Samuel Way editing. So it really flies, and Paul Konchak doing the graphics to make it look super cool, and Weary Pines doing the soundtrack that's got the synthwave feel. CEO Robin Block is allowed me to make the film that I wanted to make. And the film I'll lastly say about this is the film that the fans wanted to make. We surveyed all the backers and the horror community, and we said, you demanded a third, so what do you want it to be? What do you want here? Do you remember this part at all? But we ultimately, we picked everybody's brains, and there were write-in answers and polls based on the top 50. And I can confidently say that every single title in this film is something that was requested or voted on as something cool to see.
Yeah.
So definitely a community endeavor.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that In Search of Tomorrow gets a sequel, because the only regret I had in that one was you would, you have that lovely video store scroll, and I'd be like, oh no, that one. But I had the hope that there'll be another one where you'll cover some of the more bizarre.
Oh yeah, and much like the pattern for In Search of Darkness from 1 to 2 and now 3, with In Search of Tomorrow, the plan has always been you got to really get the heavy hitters out of the way as a foundation first, and then the second one's easier because I could do the more eclectic and strange and straight to video and knockoff style films and Texas Gladiators 2000, that kind of stuff like that.
I own that on Blu-ray.
So we're hoping to do In Search of Tomorrow too. The first one was received extremely well, and
you know what? The 80s are a wonderful time. Like after you've got the horror and sci-fi genre, you could get the 80s sex comedy. That would be a good one.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow. There's so much ground to cover. There's so much to do that we would love to do and that people want us to do. And that's the gift right there, is that people have put their confidence in us and we've been able to deliver. And so when people, we're so right now In Search of Darkness Part 3, like you said, 80shorrordoc.com is where you can get it from now until Halloween. And if you show your support, we get to make more movies like this. And so lastly, I'll say, and then we could talk all about the Munsters, but what's cool about this is you can get In Search of Darkness Part 3 by itself, or if you miss the trilogy, you can get all three. Or if you have one or the other, Part 1 or Part 2, but you don't have all of them in physical copies, you can mix and match and put a whole set together. And we've got a slipcase for it, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
And only now, between now and Halloween, you can get your name in the credits, which is super cool, or you put your podcast or your loved ones as a. But it's a keepsake, and I'm doing one more thing in relation to that, and that's because this is such a community-driven narrative, and all the choices of the content is entirely what the backers have asked for. What I want to do also is I want to incorporate as many of the backers as we can in this film during the end credits. So what I'm asking you guys, if you want to, and what I'm asking openly, is for people to record a brief testimonial about 80s horror and what they love about 80s horror, their favorite film or filmmaker, even in search of darkness in the franchise and what that means to you, whatever you'd like to do. And we're going to put as many as we can at the end credits. I can't promise all of them, but we're going to do, they're long end credits. So, but the way you can find that is if you go to all our socials at 80s Horror Doc on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You know how there's a link tree. You click on that, and there's a link to show you exactly where to go and what to do to submit your video. So hopefully by the end of the scroll, there won't be a dry eye in the house because it's going to be an emotional ride.
Wonderful. And, you have an amazing festival there now. You have your own festival. You have 13-hour, that beats that. Remember that Napoleon
it's a 14,
film?
it's 14 hours.
Yeah.
Together, 14 hours, yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
Am I in the one that's tomorrow? Is that the one?
Yeah.
You're in search of tomorrow. You are there talking about all sorts of cool things. And your segment, which I put together, but I did not have room for, I will announce here, is waiting to go in part 2, where we talk all about the cool collectibles of the era. And, in addition to talking all about Dune toys and how they didn't quite know how to market it and so on and so forth. You're amid a bunch of the talent who are holding up their own merch and responding to it, whether it's trading cards or, Billy D. Williams looking at the Burger King glass and seeing himself on it. It's good stuff.
Cool. As long as I get my name in the same credit spot as it was before. Right.
You worked out really nicely because you're in the top of the second row, right?
Yeah, I was top, and then all the names around me are Barbeau and Nancy Allen and Bruce Box Leitner and all these names, and I jokingly took a shot of it and put it on Facebook, and I was like, well, I finally get the childhood dream come true to work on something with these people. My God, people that I haven't talked to in 30 years were asking questions and and they're like, what was he? What did you do? What was he like? When is this coming out?
Yeah. They must have thought you hung out with everybody.
Yeah, like it's a movie, like it's a scripted movie. So,
well, that's how it works. You all are hanging out on the soundstage, and then I call you one by one, to sit and talk for 2-3 hours.
Right. No, they're great. Quite an achievement, and we're very proud of you, and you should be immensely proud of what you've done.
Yeah, it's amazing, man.
Yeah.
Now, next up is a good night's sleep.
Oh, what's that like?
But before we get there...
Yeah, let's help you get there by talking about the Munsters.
We have just the recipe for you.
Yes.
Just the topic to put
You know what? I've had that. That is possibly the most earwormy sitcom theme ever. I've been planning to do the show, and I've been painting and doing stuff, and all day I've been like, dun, 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 dun. Yeah. The Munsters came out in 1964. September 24th, 1964 is the first episode. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine that it's due to the monster craze of the early 1960s by the shock theater package. And, I absolutely personally love horror comedy like this, monster comedy. And
I think you point out, I'm going to just jump in real quick before we really dive into it, is that you point out the context. I think some people just think it just appeared to someone thought it was a good idea, but it is in response to this whole craze where everyone was monster crazy, from the Universal monsters all the way through to present day in the 60s, and even famous monsters, jumping on that bandwagon and helping fuel it, to Aurora models, all that stuff. There was a monster craze balanced, I guess, with Beatlemania at the time, right?
Or sometimes mixed together.
But someone really saw dollar signs and merchandising and all sorts of opportunities with, Leave It to Beaver by way of a family of Universal monsters.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Leave It to Beaver, because this show was filmed on the same street, apparently. It's from the people who created it were the creators of Bob Mosher. Yeah,
right. Yeah, the guy it's basically the people who did Leave It to Beaver wanted to poke at the family, the core family, with by having these friendly family of monsters. And I call them monsters because they're the monsters, but they are monsters, right?
Yeah, and it's a fish out of water comedy. I don't think we have to explain it to our audience, but
well, I mean, the hook kind of is that they look like they look.
Yeah.
Herman Munster looks like Frankenstein's monster. Lily looks like a vampire, lady of the dead or whatever. Grandpa's a vampire. Eddie looks like a little vampire, and then Lily,
werewolf.
He's a little werewolf kid, right?
Yeah, he's got a little V though in the front, where you don't know if what his deal is, but it's like a little ghoul. And but they kind of like to me, that one was like people would come over and notice right away. Whoa, who's with the guy? They'd notice how big Herman was, and they kind of scared people as they kind of walked around.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you can't. To me, it's hard to talk about monsters without mentioning Addams Family. Addams Family was more. It crept up on you. Like people would come over to the house and they think, oh, well, this guy's kind of eccentric. He's wearing a suit. Oh, the wife is really pretty, and that's an interesting dress. Once they got in the house and weird things started to happen with Uncle Fester and whatever, then it started to build. But I think with the Munsters, they were odd looking, like wherever they went.
But they thought they were normal.
And they thought,
the Addamses, they kind of know they're bizarre.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of that's the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Is in the comedy, because the Addamses are normal looking but weirdos.
Like so many of us, I watch this as repeats, growing up. But I have to say, I actually very specifically remember my evolution of figuring out the dynamic of the show based on Marilyn. I slowly clued in that she was Marilyn because it was supposed to be like Marilyn Monroe, and she's the beauty there. And they're always saying that she's got a handicap, and I never could understand why. I'm like, no, she's not in a wheelchair. She's not like using crutches. What's the handicap? I don't get it. And it was only until people would scream at the Munsters and want to date Marilyn if they were outside of the house that it all kind of slowly but surely, sunk into my mouth.
Yeah, and she doesn't notice them either. Like they're normal to her too.
Well, it's family,
part
right?
of the charm. Yeah.
Wow. And I have very fond memories of this because, and I also have to add also that because I was so young and I loved monsters and the Universal monsters so much, I was always, and this is when I was very young, I was always irked at the title. I'm like, why isn't it called The Monsters?
Very liberal kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I get that. I can't even remember. I remember the Addams Family because my mom talked about it all the time. She loved Cousin It. And, The Munsters, I've just always kind of known who they were, and I can't remember where I ever saw it, but always a fan. Always thought it was great. As a kid, I loved, during the early 70s, the Monster Squad. I had Hilarious House of Frightenstein. These kind of things were just, they just drew to me like a gravitational pull.
Oh, yeah. And
I love Monsters.
I would kind of get more fascinated with the guest stars, and who at this point I'm not really recognizing, but I might see a guy and I go, "Oh, that's Harvey Korman. He's on Carol Burnett."
Right.
Some of the faces, but it's the reactions. It's the people that are trying to take them for their money, or they're trying to rob them, or they're trying to pull a fast one. But the by the end of it, their eyes are kind of popping out of their heads, and they're kind of comatose because they've seen too many things, or something too bizarre has kind of happened. The writing was sharp in a very different way than, I think, Addams Family to me is the winner of the two, but the Munsters was just more. I think there was a lot more physical comedy because of Herman.
Mm-hmm.
And just the basic things he needed to do, whether it's learning to drive or, whatever those basic things in living in the big city, what they have to go through. You're taking the fish out of water and, doing.
Speaking of fish out of water, I don't want to get too far without recognizing Uncle Gilbert and whenever he would make his appearance, because I always loved the fact that the creature of the Black Lagoon, who was just like full on monster, would like show up in his trench coat and his hat to pay a visit every now and then.
To be interesting.
Yeah, that was I was a huge creature kid, so that was a
did he
moment.
Like a couple of times, or did he come in every season, or what? What was that?
He probably not too often, but I think more than once.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I saw him. I just remember when I saw him because it was so memorable to see the Creech in anything.
Yeah, I have to admit also that I really wanted like trapdoors in my own home. I definitely, because we had stairs that would go up to the second floor, I wished that they opened up and I had my own like fire breathing dragon, underneath there. I envisioned a lot of these things because I was so impressionable when I was watching this stuff. That was perfectly fine with my parents. They were like, "Oh, he's just watching TV and it's monster stuff. It's fine," But I would like go to the dinner table and I put my my napkin on my chest, like Herman Munster. Whenever he'd sit down at the table and he'd like, remember that, his dinner napkin was not something he put in his lap. He'd like. It was like your standard Ralph Cramden kind of sticking it in your shirt. So you don't, because you make a mess of your meal. So you just want to cover your suit. You guys remember this at all? Or, I don't know. This was unique for me.
That one's not ringing a bell, but you bring up Herman, and I honestly see him as the fulcrum of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. Fred Gwynne is such a hard act to follow. He imbued that with such innocence, and Herman's like a child, but he's also he's not. It's such a layered performance. It's more than the concept deserves in some regards, but it's just such a perfect
I don't
character.
think you realize how good he was and what he was doing until you see him in other stuff. And as the years went on, I'd see him on the Waterfront, or a straight part in something, just a random show that he showed up in. And he had the low voice, and maybe he'd do a Southern accent sometimes he'd do like a Brooklyn thing, like Car 54. But there was something totally different he was doing with Herman. He was making him kind of childlike, like you said, but it was the way he was using his mouth. Like he would do that thing, and I loved watching it as a kid. But because he had the black lines that and always kind of down in the corners, as if he was kind of thinking about something or being a little anxious, and then he'd lick his lips a lot. He'd get now, well,
yeah,
and it was as if you were in the room. It was so specific, like he just there. It was a joy to watch him talk in the show, and then and then he might get excited or do the laugh and kind of put his arms in front of him and wave his arms and stuff. But he just, and then when I'd finally seen him in something else, I went, oh my God, I can't believe it's the same guy.
Oh, well, I personally couldn't be, based on just his stature, I couldn't get beyond Herman at all. Like I'd see My Cousin Vinny and I just saw Herman Munster.
Yeah.
It really wasn't until Pet Sematary that I personally welcomed him as a different type of character, and I quote him all the time, sometimes dead is better. But it's more Bartles and James than Fred Gwynn, so.
But I'd imagine that's
I never thought of that, Bartles and James.
I'd imagine that's what hung over his neck for the next 30 years of acting for him. That's all anybody saw was that role. But now here's the thing: the show comes on. Would you say November of '64? Show premieres.
That's September of 64.
September, the fall of 64. Yeah.
It a hit like right out the gate.
It is, and it's its cancellation is largely blamed on Batman.
Mm-hmm.
The next big thing coming along, and
because it changed the time slot, and so because Addams Family was airing concurrently at the same time as well, but they weren't in battling time slots. But Batman came along and basically just derailed it. At least that's what Butch Patrick had said.
Yeah. Well, it was a 7:30 show, and I think Batman aired at 7 and 7:30. I don't remember.
So wait. Monsters only got one season?
2 seasons.
Two seasons in the Monsters, 70 episodes?
Yeah, okay. 70 episodes, which is crazy when I usually think a season is 26 episodes, but this was early 60s, and that made it a syndication smash.
Yes, but it does. But it gets merchandise in its lifetime while it's.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, tons. So yeah, and great stuff.
We did have a lot of stuff, much more so than the Addams Family. There was a talking string doll. There were little Remco dolls with the big heads. There were model kits. It was kind of, those were hot items at the time, right?
Yeah.
When we did Toy Ventures issue 4, it just so happened that Corey Lachat, who works on the magazine with me, he was friends with one of the biggest Munsters collectors in the world, and that guy had passed away, and we did a tribute to him and his Munsters collection. It's amazing the amount of stuff that got made in those 2 years.
The merchandising, the explosion, it's not like it started then, but in the sort of post 50s Roy Rogers lunchbox kind of, I think everyone by that time was incredibly savvy in terms of the lunchbox, the toyetic opportunities.
Absolutely, and things that were on TV every week were commercials. You're totally right.
And I have one of these myself, a little diecast version of it. But we have to make sure that we talk about the George Barris custom, Munsters coach, if you remember that. And that thing was awesome. And I loved how I only realized then that drag racing and these sort of funny car culture was imbued in the designs there. But I read that they turned that car around. They needed a functional car that was cool. They turned it around in 21 days.
Wow.
To make a car.
Yeah. And the Dragula too, right? Which was that only featured in one episode? The Dragula?
Probably.
That's crazy that he would build a car for one episode.
Did they make a die cast of the coach? I know it was made as a model kit, but did they do?
Yeah, I'm holding it in my hands. Racing Champions made it.
So
RCERTL.com.
And it's die cast?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I'm not sure I knew that.
The one that I'm holding in my hands, I kid you not, I got from the George Barris estate sale.
Oh, cool.
So maybe they weren't as common. I don't know. But of all people to have it, it would be George Barris.
Oh yeah, totally.
I've seen the life-size one before he passed, and then after he passed, George, yeah, of course, everyone who's listening knows George Barris, but he's obviously most famous for the Batmobile and all these amazing cars, the monkeys and so on and so forth. But he had an estate sale, and he had so many toys that he just had in his possession based on his cars.
Yeah.
So it's just like I couldn't resist picking up a Munsters coach.
I wish I had gone to that because he had a couple of very rare Mego Batmobiles.
Oh, yeah?
I remember seeing pictures of his collection years ago.
And then
going like, oh my God, that's rare.
They did a model kit of the Dragula too, or of the coach and the Dragula, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they've done more than one.
I mean, back then. I mean, I'm saying in the life, because I'm trying to figure out the merchandise that gets made in the life of the show, how long that's sort of out there for, and then when syndication kind of happens, and when that lines up more with the 60s monster thing, and then I don't know if we get a lot of monster stuff. We get them, round the clock on television for all this time. They seem like they've never gone to air. But there hasn't been a ton of merchandise until, I don't think it really happened again until about 30 years ago, when they, companies like Applause and stuff like that were doing monsters.
Yeah, I think the 80s kicked it off, but you're right. I mean, the 90s were really a golden era for that kind of merchandise. Now, the Munsters never really kind of went away, though, because we also got a feature film around this time. And
Munsters Go Home or something?
Yeah, I remember being really excited to watch that. In my neck of the woods, we used to have a Rochester station called Channel 2. We probably still have that channel. But they used to have, that movie for the afternoon thing. They would do Halloween monster movies every October. And that was like event television for me. And, that's where I saw War of the Gargantuas, Reptilicus, Frankenstein Conquers the World, like all these amazing films. And one day it was Munster Go Home, and I'll never forget it. I couldn't get over them in color.
Right. I didn't like seeing him green. I couldn't wrap my brain around that. I was so used to the black and white look.
Yeah, I remember it was kind of mind-bending to see it. And then, I think they're talking a little bit about Herman's history in that one. You find out he was adopted by the Munsters. Just like this was mind-blowing. I haven't seen the film since I was a kid, believe it or not.
I have to tell you, though, in terms of this, this is just me. I don't need to know anything about Herman Munster's history. I'd rather have it be a mystery. Clearly he's Frankenstein's monster. So that's all I need. Like, I already know the story. Like,
I agree with you on that.
And this
it's pretty preset.
I appreciate the present and not the mystery or the unraveled past revealed. Certain goofy face value sitcoms. I just don't need that more. I just want good jokes and
raucous. I need to know
and a laugh track.
You don't need an origin story, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't.
Well,
I would really like the Welcome Back Kotter origin story.
You're in luck because one just a couple of weeks ago. But we'll get there. We'll get to that new origin story. Can
I ask you guys before we move on, because we're talking a lot about Addams Family as well. If you had to choose between 1313 Mockingbird Lane or what are they? 001 Cemetery Lane, 1 Cemetery Lane, where the Addams Family lived. If you could choose the Addams Family house or the Munsters house, where would you want to live?
I'd probably want to live in the Addams Family house.
I'd take the Addams Family house, yeah.
It's probably it's probably got some secret compartments, and there's probably some good liquor in that house.
Yeah. And just all the medieval stuff that he was into, and all the weird gear that was there, and the torture devices, and
that's true.
That they use for relaxation.
The Munsters house to me always just was like a classic haunted house to me.
Yeah.
And I loved how every time they showed the exterior, it was never a sunny, beautiful day.
Yeah.
It was always like heavy, breezy winds and just like ready to rain. And that was the appeal for me.
Yeah.
I think my single favorite thing ever on that show is an episode where a guy's picking on Herman at work. And he works for John Carradine, which I just love. But I think they tell Herman to assert himself, and he's like, I'm going to go there and tell that guy off. And just as he's doing that, the guy who's picking on Herman is standing in the office. And this guy another coworker goes, why are you picking on Herman? And he goes, because he's an idiot. And he goes, have you looked at him? And the guy goes out to the window and watches Herman walking to work, and there's two cars parked too close to each other, and Herman can't cross the street, so he moves both cars. Yeah. And I find that really funny because the guy just gets a sick face, and then Herman comes in and stands up to him, and the guy's pooping his pants.
That's great.
That's the comedy of the Munsters, that's the absurdity of it. And that's what makes it wonderful and sweet. And
and he was kind of sweet and dumb, and Lily's in control. Lily is in control of that house, of that family. She is, she's where it's at, and it's a nice dynamic that she's looking after him, forgetting his lunchbox, or just, treating him like a baby or a kid, but loving him, to bits. And Grandpa, I can never tell if Grandpa liked Herman or if he was someone to hang out with because he didn't want to have to deal with his daughter, or what his deal was, or he was just always there to,
It seemed to be a little fair weather, just like friends by proximity.
Yeah.
But I have to say, Lily may have been my first tingly feeling. I was just like,
oh wow,
something about her, ironically, it wasn't Marilyn. I went straight for the goth.
I
agree. Same thing. I think there's something about her that she was one of my early crushes too. She just, the black lipstick and the just the white skin. I don't know. And it might be a goth girl thing. I don't know, but it definitely made me feel a little fluttered.
The only way I could win any argument with you guys is to completely side with you, right? I'm the same boat. There's something to it, and Lily's.
So we got the movie, which I think I saw once, maybe when it aired.
I've only ever seen it once.
But then we got a TV special once, because the show only runs 2 seasons. It never.
We got a cartoon pilot in the 70s that I don't remember, but I believe Al Lewis actually did voice Grandpa in it, called the Mini Munsters. That I don't know if I've ever seen.
Did it air, or did they just make a pilot?
It was a 1-hour special, 73.
Oh,
yeah, ABC did all these weird 1 hour. There's a Lost in Space one too, where they got Jonathan Harris to voice Dr. Smith. It's like they were experimenting with bringing, how they would try to bring back My Favorite Martians and Gilligan's Planet and that sort of thing. I think they were trying to explore that, and the Munsters didn't make the cut, even though you'd think they would for a Saturday morning show. But then, we got this.
I was going to just say the repeats really did give it a life of its own, though. It's almost
absolutely,
like Star Trek. I think a lot of popular 70s shows that were reruns of shows in the 60s, the rerun dynamic fueled so much more, where people just said, we've already done it, we don't have to make more, unless they want to make a TV movie or a special or bring it back. But it's it's already there, and I think they saw dollar signs.
It was all through my childhood. I just know in the afternoon it was Addams Family or Munsters, then the Addams Family. In a 1 hour block, they played them back to back, and Battle of the Planets and Doctor Who when it was syndicated before it went to public TV. But but those two were like must-sees every day. And it seemed for years, they always ran in the afternoons. Every afternoon, they ran those shows, you know.
And it seemed unlimited, too. Like, you know, you would see repeats every now and then, but for the most part, it always seemed new. There always seemed to be a new episode.
Yeah, and I don't know when I first saw it, but it was probably an after-school thing, and I went, oh, this is... They might have run the Addams Family. Wait, did the Addams Family have a cartoon on Saturday morning?
Uh-huh.
It did. Yeah, it actually did. And Jodie Foster was Wednesday.
Oh,
The voice of Wednesday.
Yes.
I might have seen some of that before seeing a show, maybe. I don't know. But then the Munsters did. So then the Munsters did a TV special in color. Did they not?
Monsters Revenge. Yeah, and it's I want to say it's 19. I think I was in 4th grade. I remember it really well. And it, for me, really bugs me because it leans too far into a plot that, like, the original Munsters was always about like parent-teacher night, and it was a normal sitcom with abnormal people, but the Munsters Revenge is like a monster caper film. And for me, something's lost in that. I don't know what you guys feel about it.
Yeah, every time they try and expand it to make it a bigger thing because it's an opportunity to make a movie. I feel like it's the fish out of water people who are already fish out of water, and you put them in a new. They're fish out of water times 2 is what I'm trying to say. You know, like it's like you're not used to them seeing them in that sort of scenario, and so it kind of takes you out of familiarity, which is what you love and cling to. And while that's new and different and stretching the characters in the story, it doesn't necessarily make for an enjoyable experience, you know?
Yeah.
That goes back real quick just to say it. You know, some things I just want it to be exactly, I want my bread and butter to be the same every single day for certain things.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I remember the most interesting thing was I remember it well as a kid and I liked it. And then I bought it on DVD for my kids because we have an 8-hour drive to Grandma and Grandpa's place. And I picked it up and thought, well, here's 2 hours of that drive. And they liked it a lot, but I couldn't get over, like, you know, it's got robots in it. And who's the Dr. Diablo in that movie? Sid Caesar. Yeah, Sid Caesar's the bad guy. But there's a guy playing the Phantom of the Opera in it. Cousin Phantom. It's the same guy who did the voice of Commissioner Gordon. Bob Hastings. That's who it is. And it's just too weird. It's I didn't ever want to see the Munsters have adventures, I guess is where, you know what I mean? I
don't think I remember this, actually.
Yeah. It's a weird movie. And of course they've done that thing where, you know, it's like 10 years later, but Marilyn and Eddie are still the same age for some reason.
Yeah. It's almost like you know, these Brady Bunch specials, and you know, less and less were all the Bradys the original Brady kids. You know, Jan. Right. First, it's Jan is different. Then you know, Bobby Brady is different, and by that time, it's just the parents. You know, it's that sort of thing where it's like, why come back if you can't have the original folks? And I don't know. I think you know, you're talking about the robots and all the crazy stuff like that. That's also sort of you know, we're living at that era in like a Sid and Marty Krofft universe where
you're right.
Kiss meets the Phantom of the Park is really Kiss in concert and then battling robot, you know, doppelgangers.
And that's also the era of Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island, which
exactly
is like, how do we make Gilligan's Island stupider? You know, like
Well, elevated by Martin Landau, but I digress.
Yeah, Martin Landau's lowest point. In
Martin
his career.
Landau and Barbara Bain, just the worst, lowest points.
Yeah. Like I have a copy of Without Warning, and Landau apparently shot that in 5 days, and that is not a low point anymore.
Well, he gives it all, no matter what. He's
doing a great job. But yeah, I would have to
Without
say,
Warning, it's actually not a bad. I mean, it's a bad movie, but it tries. But the Globetrotter thing, for him to just take it, he had to work, and he's taken Matt this part, and
that's the thing. He was terrible at basketball. Why cast him? Oh wait.
when they were doing Ed Wood, I remember an interview with Tim Burton and saying, as he'd met with Landau, and Landau had read the script, and he really enjoyed the bit about the squid, the big octopus that didn't work. And Burton was like, I think he completely related. He totally related.
He'd been there. To
a guy who had, been, I think he was from the Actors Studio, and he worked with Hitchcock and a lot of big movies, and it's like Bela Lugosi had everything going for him, and there's where he ends up, and that he felt he understood the character because he'd sort of been there. Like, this is,
some days you're up, some days you're down, but at least he's got a paycheck that's gonna, he can cash.
The scene with the octopus is him just thinking about the Harlem Globetrotters.
Right, Gilligan's Island and Harlem Globetrotters,
working through that.
The funniest thing about the Munsters' Revenge is that Al Lewis really embraced being Grandpa Munster. He even had a restaurant in New York called Grandpa's.
Oh yeah, where he told tall tales.
So I mean, that it's always funny when you have that one cast member who's complete. Like I don't think Fred Gwynne totally embraced Herman, but I do think that Al Lewis was completely fine with being Grandpa.
Everyone called him Grandpa Lewis.
He'd come on radio stations in New York. I remember growing up, and he was pretty much. I was excited because he sounded just and acted like Grandpa.
Yeah, I don't think he was stretching to play Grandpa on the show.
Well, that was the smart bit, is because Car 54, Where Are You was pretty popular. I mean, prior to because that was pre-Munsters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. Yeah.
Getting those two to be in the same show, they're kind of like, well, we got these guys. Put them together again. They're in the, people love them in the other show being goofy. Put them in this thing. That was kind of smart.
Worked. Yeah, it totally worked. They had chemistry. And we never have to talk about the Car 54 movie reboot.
That did happen. I do recall that.
Yeah, I want to say it had Buster Poindexter was in it.
Good pull. Yes.
Yes.
I think he was in it.
Yeah, I think who the other one. What's his name from Scrubs? There, John. I can't remember his name. You'd know him if you saw him. He was the other one.
Oh, okay. But was there anybody else
that fever dream?
Was there anybody besides Uncle? What was he called? Cousin Willie? What was he called? Cousin. The guy.
Uncle Gil?
You're talking about
Uncle Gil. Was there anybody else that was
Yes.
Like.
Well, they created their own characters. You had things like Zombo, and there was a robot that actually makes an appearance in the new movie. But I don't think that a lot of Universal monsters really appeared, other than our principals and Uncle Gil, unless I'm wrong, David.
No, not really.
Yeah.
They were the novelty, really.
Yeah.
So, if anything, I think the Addams Family, when you'd have like the likes of Cousin It showing up and things like that, that was, that thing falling in love or what have you. It's that was sort of what made it a little different and odd for those guys.
Wasn't there one?
Bewitched had all kinds of uncles and aunts that were amazing.
Yeah.
Was there one where Herman took a potion and got normal, kind of? He was still big, but he sounded smart, or he sounded normal or something. Am I crazy?
Sounds familiar. Yeah, I haven't seen I probably have seen every episode of the Munsters, but not in a row. And,
not so fresh.
That's if you did.
Do you guys want to go into the Munsters reboot and continuation and reattempt territory?
Yeah. Like, it just refused to die. And the next one, I think the next one was the Munsters Today, which I saw twice, I think, in my life.
Now, is this the one with Edward Herman?
No. We're not there yet.
That's the one with John Shuck.
Yeah, it's got John Shuck, Lee Merriweather, and Howard Morton, who was he was off Give Me a Break. He was the kind of wimpy assistant to the chief of police. What's his name there? Dolph Sweet. Who, if you've ever looked at Dolph Sweet's IMDb, it's like captain, lieutenant, sergeant, captain, lieutenant, sergeant. Like, he was just born to play cops. But yeah, this show actually lasted 3 seasons and has more episodes.
Yeah, it lasted longer.
Munsters.
I remember giving it a try, sampling it, and I remember John Shuck, knowing him from like Holmes and Yo-Yo.
Yeah, and Macmillan and Wife.
Right. And Star Trek, big screen Star Trek too. He played a Klingon.
Right, yeah, he was a Klingon. Yeah.
In Star Trek 4, putting Kirk on trial. Not Kirk on trial, but he was sort of taking him to task after all that stuff.
Justice.
But I digress. Exactly. But I digress in that I remember really trying to give him a chance, and I remember he just looked too much like John Shuck, and it's like,
he still
Herman
does.
Munster, and we'll get to it as well. But I mean, it's such an iconic look that anyone trying to look like Herman Munster and not just Frankenstein's monster, if they don't look like the original, it seems too far off for me. It just throws off my meridian.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I only saw it when I was on vacation, because it didn't air in Canada, or at least where I lived. But I saw it when I was in Florida, and I saw 2 episodes, and I remember thinking, this is hee-haw. I did that's how I felt about it. And, there was just this, first of all, I couldn't stand Howard Morton as Grandpa. It just didn't work for me. And, there was a thing where he was supposed to be making out with a girl in his coffin. And it was so, God, this is bad, cringe. I know the show has its fans, but it's no New Monkeys, if you know what I'm saying.
Well, it's like when your kids watch the movie. If it's new to you, then it's probably fine, or at least passable. I try and keep that in perspective with all these reboots and requels and whatever you would call them these days.
Sure.
And again, we'll get to Rob Zombie's The Munsters shortly, mm-hmm. But I try and look at it from the lens of, there's an audience that this is their first exposure to it, and maybe it's not so bad, or at least maybe they like it, and if they are fine with the Jar Jar Binkses of continuations sagas, then all power to them. But it is very hard, and I remember The Munsters Today very specifically as new Munsters. Wait, it's not the originals, but I'll try it. Oh no, I don't like this at all.
Yeah, and
it seems like it's like stage theater, it's like
it was cheap syndicated television, like Small Wonder, or you're not going to get the production value or the writing, and I'm of the mind that remakes don't take away the original in any way. It still exists.
It's the soul away, like taking a picture. No.
Yeah, and I can take or leave them. And I can also, I have a very good power to ignore things. So, not once have I put on an episode of the Munsters and gone, oh, the Munsters today has ruined this for me. No, it's still there. It's fine.
Apples and oranges.
Yeah, it's fine. And there was no way you were going to get that cast back to do a cheap syndicated show. It's there's nothing's being taken away from me.
Did you guys go out of your way to check out Mockingbird Lane when that came out? Finally, after being delayed?
I did.
Wait, sorry. Wait. Don't we have to? Did we go past the one with Edward Herrmann and the one with Robert?
No. We're going to go to that. The early '90s. There was also, I don't know if you guys heard this, but I heard a rumor in the early '90s that they were going to do a big budget Munsters film, and it was going to have DeVito and Schwarzenegger. And I remember thinking, great casting on Grandpa. Please, God, no on Herman. I think DeVito could pull off an amazing Grandpa because he's a good actor. But
I would see that if it was an SNL skit, definitely.
Yeah. But
that sounds like the kind of rumor that would come out of the '90s.
Yeah. So
it's kind of great.
Then instead of that, we got the TV movies from Fox in '95, and I remember where I was when I watched these. And then you have, as you guys have said, Edward Herrmann, who a lot of people believe may have been the best of the follow-ups.
He was. He totally was.
Yeah, he was pretty good.
He never overplayed it, and he was really good. And he had the eyes right and the mouth right. He did a good job. And then Robert Morley, I think, was Grandpa.
Robert Morse from St. Elsewhere. Yeah.
Robert Morse. Robert Morley. He's a fat British actor. Sorry.
And I'm glad that you were able to identify Robert Morley after getting that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Robert Morse was great too. I mean, it was a weird thing for, he's such a distinguished actor, and
and I've never seen him do anything comedic, so that was strange. Yeah. Christine Taylor played Marilyn, and Marilyn's last name in that movie is Hyde, so you kind of get the connection. I remember thinking that was pretty okay. I remember, I think it's actually an origin movie again, where they moved to the States. So, but I thought it was kind of funny. I have very little memory of it, but
yeah, I remember seeing a couple episodes going, this is not bad. Like this.
Well, it was just 2 movies, wasn't it? 2 movies. They did a Christmas movie the next year, but then it had a new cast again.
Oh, okay. Because I know I saw some of the Edward Herrmann and Robert.
Yeah,
Morse.
I did too. Yeah, and I remember them flying to the States.
I thought it got some of the spirit of what the show was to me. Yeah, it was the closest to anything I'd seen. Yeah.
And then,
and Veronica Hamill as Lily, I think, is pretty inspired casting, at least for that era.
Too. That's
from St. Elsewhere. Yeah.
Another St. Elsewhere. That's weird.
Was she on St. Elsewhere?
No. Sorry, I'm wrong. Hill Street Blues.
Yeah,
I'm thinking Robert Morse, and I'm thinking St. Elsewhere. But no, Veronica Hamill was Hill Street Blues.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say that seems serendipitous. And then the Munsters kind of goes, I think, kind of blank for a while.
Yeah.
And this is something I want to bring up now because it's going to come to haunt us later. But the Wayans brothers get a hold of the property, and I can honestly remember going, "Oh God, no!" If you, not that this is the Talmud or the token, but it just will not be treated with any fairness.
Well, they wanted to in living colorize the comedy of it, but apparently they didn't want to appear in it anyway. They were just going to produce it.
Yeah, I know, but still, I mean, have you seen a scary movie? I mean, I love I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker. That's possibly one of my favorites. One of
I'll stand by the scary movie franchise. They made me laugh, but it's more like because they're always it's just a running gag of satires of other films.
It's
usually lowest paced humor, but sometimes it's stuck.
But it's quite disposable. You know what I mean? Like I laughed at them too. And my God, they were way better than the other imitators out there. But, you know, this is something that doesn't have that throwaway gag humor to it. And it would have really, I think, been a bad fit. And we would be glossing over that as quickly as possible. But yeah, I guess the next thing really was like, what was this, like 16 years later, the Mockingbird Lane from Brian Fuller.
Yeah,
such a
pushing Daisy's creator, and Hannibal, right?
Yeah, and I remember I was working at Topless Robot at the time, and this was like a big deal, and they canceled it, but the pilot aired as a Halloween special. I think I remember watching it.
Well, I think before you get into the minutia of it, Pushing Daisies was like a big hit. You know, and it was quirky, and it was funny, and it was offbeat, and it was left of center, and so it seemed like maybe a natural fit to turn, you know, the Munsters into Desperate Housewives or something like that. I'm just talking about on paper. I'm not validating that.
Okay.
But that was, I think that was the excitement about it. But apparently, it like $10 million in development went through, and before they ever, it changed. Apparently, it changed from one house to another and ended up at Universal, but it didn't start there. And so,
but it's indicative of that whole thing where somebody that's been working for a little bit gets a little bit of success, and then suddenly it's like, well, what do you want to do? You can do anything you want, and they treat people like they're geniuses, or that they're just these auteurs that come in with visions and stuff. Brian Fuller's a one-trick pony as far as I'm concerned. And half the time I think other people come in creatively on things like Hannibal, because in my understanding of him from people that have worked with him and near him and network-wise, absolute nightmare of a human being, just in every way. And this Mockingbird Lane thing, like really putting his foot down about how great this thing is. And whatever they showed us, I watched it. If we only saw that, like it was a premiere and we got one episode, I think we got more than one though. I think they kind of canceled it, but still ran.
They aired the pilot episode, and they just didn't know what to do with it, and they wanted to recoup their investment, and so it just never went to series. But they spent so much time on it. Brian Singer directed it as well. I never saw it, but I've seen like images and trailer, and the fact that Eddie Izzard, his grandpa, has potential, but it still doesn't feel like the Munsters. It feels like.
But that's the thing. It wasn't. It not only was it terrible, it would be terrible if it was called, dwarf piss freaks. You call it.
Well, wait a minute. I watched that trilogy.
Terrible and terribly done. But the fact that you're using the IP of the Munsters, and you just go, why didn't you just make something original? Because it's so far, it's like saying let's do a Munsters, but here's the catch: they're not monsters.
Yeah. Well,
just hear me out. They're not monsters.
Okay, but they're monsters. At this time, there was a show that said we're going to do Superman, but he never puts on.
He's not allowed to fly.
And that lasted 10 years, Jake.
Well, it wasn't called Superman, though. It wasn't called.
No, it was called Smallville, and this show was called 13 Mockingbird Lane.
Right. Nobody wants to see the Munsters looking like 5 humans with nothing odd about them. I mean, even Eddie Izzard's character was like a guy in a beard, and he's got a weird heart that he needs to kind of look at every now and then. Like, it just was there's such a thing as putting a spin on something, and then there's something where you're throwing the source material out completely.
Yeah.
Well, what's the point of even doing this? Why bother even doing this? Just make a new show. Just make a new show with another family, because this you want the recognition of the Munsters. That's why you have these characters and you have the address. They called it Mockingbird Lane instead of the Munsters, so this one's going to be different. But then, and on top of which, it just wasn't funny because it wasn't like sitcom funny. It was meant to be sort of matter-of-factly funny. And, oh, isn't that a strange way to make coffee or whatever? And it just was abysmal, absolutely abysmal.
I didn't think it was.
I have like a real wacky idea. It's kind of wish fulfillment. I would love to see a Munsters movie, like in present day. But you get someone edgy to direct it, like Rob Zombie, Because I think
David, you're in luck.
You're in luck.
But I just wanted to say 1313 Mockingbird Lane. I watched it. I didn't hate it, but I did kind of sit there and go like, I don't get why they used the Munsters either. Like, it's so far removed from the concept.
Yeah.
But we get into those phases where, we don't want superheroes to put on the costumes. We don't want the monsters to look like monsters. And it's like, what do we want?
No. But see, I would go further. It's not that we don't want that. The creators don't want that, or the people that go.
But they're kind of embarrassed by it.
We're not going to have Batman in this series, but we'll do a combination of the GCPD comic book and Gotham and whatever. And eventually second season, here comes some supervillains.
Have you guys ever heard my son and I's concept for Kent Farm? Kent Farm. It's Jonathan Kent as a boy. And, we never do anything that revolves around the DCU, but we hint at it. So, we're talking about, the harvest and the tractor breaks down and, maybe occasionally like someone pulls into the farm and it turns out to be Kent Nelson or,
that to me sounds like Gotham.
Yeah. Well, my son and I were joking about it. And then, I think when that Pennyworth came out,
Secret Life of Alfred Pennyworth.
When Pennyworth came out, my son and I went, "Oh, we better not. We should probably pitch this. It'll probably sell."
But the odd thing is, Pennyworth is one of the best things that DC has put on television because it's completely insane. In the same way that, what was the other one we were talking about before that we loved so much? The not the X-Men, but the Squad, the Misfits. Pennyworth is great because it has this much to do with Batman or Gotham or anything, and it literally was like these guys going, "We'll use Pennyworth." Well, Pennyworth's background was MI6, and he was in the army, and he's a total badass. Let's see what he did before any of this stuff happened. And now they're subtitling it, before he was the butler, whatever the fuck. But for 2 seasons, it was just called Pennyworth, and it is amazing. It's written by Bruno.
Isn't it called like Batman's Butler Begins now or something?
Well, that's what they're doing now. This thing managed to get a 3rd season because of the Rotten Tomato scores and because of how much people loved the first 2 seasons. I'm telling you, it's a weird spy show that takes place in this alternate kind of London where the Bobbies and Beefeaters walk around with submachine guns and there's executions in the daylight in the town square, and the timings don't work out right, but you'll hear London Calling by The Clash, and it's supposed to be like 1962 kind of. It's very stylish. It's very strange.
So that sounds like a good show. What I really want to see is all the help at Wayne Manor. We'll call it like instead of like the Crown, we'll call it the Cowl.
Like what's the laundry lady? She's like, there's blood again in his suit.
You know what? If you do anything and you do it well and you pitch it well and you write it well and it's good, I don't care if it's about Batman's fucking dry cleaner. If it's a good show, it's a good show. But you don't take a show about the Munster family and turn it into something completely different that nobody wants to watch. Like it shouldn't, it's like they probably had him pitch it, and because he had so much power and weight at the time, they had to go along with it. But there should have been people in the room that went, I don't know how this is the Munsters. Why don't you just make something different? Why don't you just come up with something different? Because I don't think this is going to work. And it's not heightened enough. I mean, I don't even know how you do a show like the Munsters now because it is so heightened. Addams Family is easy enough to do. because of the dynamic of the family and the wackiness. But the Munsters is much more big and broad. So you either have to kind of do it for kids or
You have to have a laugh. It
something.
has to have its heart in the right place.
Which brings us to
Yes.
a movie that Rob Zombie did called The Munsters.
May I speak? May I speak first before we?
Absolutely.
Because it's obvious how we feel before we even talk about this. But
We don't know that.
maybe
No,
not. Maybe not.
no,
Well, okay. Well, I'd like to just.
I've been doing podcasts with him for 8 years, and I'll tell you something. You do not know what his answer is going to be because he doesn't make any sense.
That's right.
Well,
I'm a nincompoop.
I wanted to give this the benefit of the doubt, especially because after seeing the trailer and the little clips that they chose, which you should be like the cream of the crop to make it funny, even if the movie is not so good, the trailer shows off the best moments. So that's really indicative of what you're about to get. So I was really curious to check this out at the very least and give it the benefit of the doubt. And I think I will say that I saw what Rob Zombie was going for in terms of the color palette and the quirkiness and the sort of creepshow projections when, Lily falls in love for the first time and you got hearts flying around behind her. Things like that. I could see the creativity flowing where he's doing his best to make this interesting visually. I could see it. And I was going with it. I was not going to be, it just wasn't that very funny, but I'm like, maybe there will be a joke that'll hit and I'll get one good laugh. Let's see. I did not finish this film because once Herman Munster arrived and he was laughing at his own jokes in Herman Munster style, the laughter was so bad and so awful and so off-putting that it was like nails on a chalkboard for me. And I felt badly, but I was just like, this is making it really difficult to watch. And I was even forgiving the fact that they ripped off Young Frankenstein in terms of how Herman appeared, in terms of giving the wrong brain.
On that same note, I'll go further because I wanted to give it a chance because as we've discussed many times, Brian and I have discussed, and most of my friends know, I have this innate inability to trash something unless I've seen it. And so I don't,
fair. That's fair.
If I see a trailer for a show or something, I go, I think I pretty much know what that show is going to be. I'm still going to give it a couple of episodes and then go, you know what? It's kind of what I thought. Not for me. Moving on. And if it ever comes up in conversation, I can say, yeah, I did watch Girls. In fact, I watched 3 seasons of Girls and I've done my part. Okay. It's not a good show. And this is why. So with this thing,
how did you stick out 3
I didn't want to sit through a trailer of the Munsters. I didn't want to sit through a trailer of the Munsters that looked like it was put together by blind children without hands underground somewhere, and go. That's the movie. I wanted to go. Maybe the trailer was kind of rushed. Maybe this little bit of footage that we're seeing, they're going to clean it up, and let's not all jump to conclusions like everybody else did everywhere all over social media. So I watched it. Now I didn't finish it either, because I got to about the 40-minute point and realized it's a 2-hour film. And at about the 40-minute point, I thought, I have so many other things to watch. There's so much else I could do. I can give my dog a bath. I can pick my nose, any number of things. The problem with it is,
you could do those and watch.
So you go, yeah, he didn't get to do black and white. So he made it more garish with the colors. He really went all out. Oh, okay, I'll give him that. But literally in every other category, whether it's technical or writing or acting or blocking or ADR or sound effects or music,
fighting,
in every single category, it is fucking abysmal. It is so like, I don't know what she's doing. I don't know how this is Lily in the least. She's just doing, oh, well, I get my dog black heart. Like, who is this? What are you doing? I don't know what he was doing as Herman, because it wasn't even an approximation of trying to sound like Herman. And he could probably do it too. He's got the the size and the stature.
Well, he tried to do the laugh, and that's what for me.
Grandpa was trying a little bit, but that didn't last. That he didn't really go full Al Lewis with the thing, and he didn't really go all the way there. He went to Budapest to shoot this thing. It looks like it was filmed just outside, somewhere in Sherman Oaks, is kind of where the locations were. And the jokes were like Nickelodeon sitcom jokes from like 94. That's how bad. Oh, you think? Things like, well, there it is. Oh, you think? And that's, so you go, this isn't for kids, because I know kids, and my friends' kids wouldn't sit in front of this because it's too dumb for them. Like, it's just, this isn't, so it's not really for kids. So like, who is this abomination for? And then when they get up and do I Got You, Babe.
Oh, you got that far. Okay.
I Got You, Babe. I just went, somebody tell me what the point of this is, because it's not funny. It's not blocked well. It's not shot well. It's just, I don't know who this was for or what the point. Everybody's going to say, there's loads of people that are sort of trashing it and then going, but it wasn't that bad. And it was I kind of get that he was trying to do something different and make a thing for a younger audience and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, a bad movie is a bad movie. You can fall in love with it and you can say it's your new favorite thing or whatever. But from a technical aspect, everything that was wrong with that film is only half of what's wrong with that film.
Well, it was impressive that they released it and they didn't hide it like a tax write-off, because that seems to be the popular thing to do now. So yeah, Warner Brothers and that.
We get a Scooby-Doo movie that's written by Paul Dini, and this Batgirl thing, however bad that was going to be, at least Keaton was going to be in it. We can't see those, but we get this Munsters atrocity dropped in our laps for free. So at least it was free. I couldn't even finish it at free.
Brian, point, counterpoint. Brian. Now you have to say, Jason, slut.
Okay, well, thank you for leaving me to the end. My first point about this movie, and this is something that says a lot about me, is I will zig when other people zag, was the minute it was announced, it was largely dismissed as being horrible. The minute that, and let me just preface this by saying that I have never liked a Rob Zombie film, and I have not sought many out. I tried House of a Thousand Corpses. I didn't like it. The idea of remaking Halloween had no appeal to me, but Halloween in itself is a franchise with 3 movies I like, and the rest is all forgettable. So I don't really have any umbrage with Rob Zombie. He's never hurt me in any way. So when I heard he was
show us on the doll where Rob Zombie.
I have no anger towards him. And when the internet, and I'm not talking about you guys, but when the internet's so vitriolic and so hyperbolic about everything, and yes, I did think it was really funny that he, of course he cast his wife as Lily. We all knew that was happening. And I chuckled at that. And then when they cast Dan Roebuck as Herman, I thought, well, there's a guy.
Grandpa.
Pardon me?
Grandpa. Dan Roebuck.
Yeah, sorry. When they cast Dan Roebuck as the Count, because he's not Grandpa yet, I thought, well, that's good casting, because not only is he an Uber fan, but he's a really good actor.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea who was playing Herman. And so I went into it with an open mind. It was not helped by the worst trailer I think I've ever frickin' seen. Okay. Full Moon does better trailers than that. And I don't know why they would release it with bad sound.
I suspect, and I don't know anything, I honestly don't, but I suspect that Universal did not want to even pay for a slick trailer.
Yeah, so Rob Zombie made it?
Zombie said, I'll make it if you release it, I'll make a trailer in by tomorrow or whatever.
He shouldn't have, because I think it did more detriment, and so when it came out, I had, my Facebook feed was full of people saying, guess what? It sucks. And these were people that have been saying it was going to suck for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And,
well, people like to be right,
Yeah. And I thought, well, I'm still going to just watch this damn thing. And I was working on the magazine and I put it on. I have 2 screens here and I watched it. And I didn't hate it. Is it great? No.
Did you watch it with 2 eyes, though?
Yes, I did.
I'm serious. Like, sometimes when you're doing other things and you're watching it and you're like, well, this isn't so bad. But if you're like paying full attention.
Yeah, no.
I watched it over 2 nights too, because I wasn't paying attention and I turned it off and rewound it and watched it again. And
you rewound it? Wait a minute. There's a story here. So you recorded it on videotape?
No. I was just using just like I say, I tape things, David. I don't actually mean I have any physical tape. Yeah. I'm an old person now. I'm in AARP. I'm in the American Association of Photographers.
I know. I listen to the television too. Go on.
Yes.
Like the radio.
And I also call shows by the character names, like my grandma. So it's not Seinfeld, it's Kramer. It's not Jeopardy, it's Alex. So basically what like, first of all, the thing that really won me over is in like the first scene, he's got a Templar knight from Tombs of the Blind Dead in the opening scene. And this may be where we differentiate a little bit, but I actually laughed at the film because I found Jorge Garcia really funny. I couldn't get over I was expecting not to laugh, but Jorge Garcia and that guy playing, I guess, Dr. Frankenstein they had some comedic timing. They weren't bad. Mm-hmm. Do I think it's a technically well-made film? No, it's not. I like what he was trying to do. And in the back of my mind, I kept thinking the Wayans brothers. So, I had that kind of weighing me down. It took me a long time to get used to the Herman guy. And this is where we differentiate. When you're doing a reboot of a movie like Star Trek, or you're doing the Munsters or anything like that, you can get caught into doing like complete imitations of the characters, or you could just try and do it your own way. And I think that the J.J. Abrams Star Trek cast nailed it, where it was a homage, but they were doing it in their own voice.
Well, but here's the flaw to that plan where this is concerned. So let's say he doesn't choose to do Herman. He doesn't choose to go, well, and put his voice there or something. Instead,
is that your Hamptons voice?
Instead, he's doing this like I don't know. I'm going to home. I don't know what he was doing. It wasn't funny. It didn't work. It didn't make any sense. She had no solid, like, controlling kind of voice that, an essence of kind of who Lily. I mean, if you want to completely not seem like the character from the show, completely, then they both did it. They both don't seem. So again, you just go, what is the point of this?
Well, this is supposed to be an origin story too, and I know that's good or bad, but
that's bad.
I first of all have never seen Cheryl Zombie. Is that her name? Cheryl Zombie?
Sherry Moon
Zombie. I've never seen her in anything, and I had no expectations of her whatsoever. And I thought she was okay as Lily. I think the film really suffers in editing, and
it suffers in the look too. I mean, it looks like.
I think it looks gorgeous.
I think the colors look okay, but it looks like it's shot on videotape.
Well, it's a low budget film, and that's another.
Yeah, you can't. There's so many low budget films that are made for less than this thing. It looks cheap. That's one of the things that people say is they're shocked that Universal, however small the budget was, like said, here, we're going to make a new franchise, go to it, because this isn't.
Yeah, and I don't think this is best foot forward
also
for.
Could be kind of like a Roger Corman Fantastic Four. We got to crank something out to maintain the rights situation. Also,
that would make complete sense.
And I fundamentally boil this down to I don't know why. I feel like it's like an underdog situation. So I want to be like Rob Zombie tried, but I think fundamentally he's not a comedy director.
Well, I would agree with you on that.
And so the writing, I think it lives or dies with the script that they got, whoever they got to write it. This was not a funny script. Well, he's handed something where he's just really heavy-handed with everything he does, because the Munsters are incredibly broad with their humor. And so he's trying to echo the original show, but, converging with this script that is just from another time and another wastebasket, it just didn't work.
Well, I've seen more of his films than I care to admit. But again, it's to be able to go, yeah, I saw House of a Thousand Corpses. Yes, I saw that one. No, they're not good. No, and the remake.
Yeah, well, I always call him like a faux finish director. Like he's trying to do that faux grunge or faux grindhouse look to it. That simulated flavoring.
Yeah, I get that.
I don't like that.
He's making kind of exploitation flicks, is what he's doing. That's kind of.
But I mean, you can't make the Texas Chainsaw Massacre using filters. You have to actually
I agree, but yeah, the thing is, I think he co-wrote or wrote most of those as well. But he wrote this. Now, if he could have gotten a couple of people that love the Munsters and they kind of get how the jokes went, or there's a rhythm to the jokes in the Munsters. There's a rhythm to the absurdity and how you're riffing on monster tropes and eating weird things or whatever. You could get a couple of guys to come in and knock out a script, but that's not what he did. And if you had something funny, this could have looked bad and sounded bad and had bad music and bad direction and bad blocking and bad acting, all the above. If there was, and it did, but if it had a decent script or a semi-solid script that kind of went somewhere and that was funny, actually had jokes in it or funny bits in it, and also might have been, I don't know, hour and 10 minutes, maybe.
I think it needed a laugh track, and that would have helped. I also feel like I think that applies to M. Night Shyamalan's The Happening. That needs a laugh track.
Yeah, they said that about World War II too. Just bring a laugh track, and it's a completely different story.
But gents, my family is hungry and waiting for me, and I'm enjoying this conversation, but I do need to wrap it up soon. But you guys can continue on.
Well, you guys, do the Munsters for your Friday night movie tonight with the family.
Yeah, I did. I had it on, and they had the opportunity to watch because both were in my orbit while I said, I'm going to watch this. And my kid just was not interested. He was playing his video, playing Roblox. And my wife just was doing things in the kitchen where normally she probably didn't want to be, but I think she felt safer there. So, and then 40 minutes in, I turned it off and I just said, I just can't anymore. And they said, wasn't that good, was it? And I said, nope. And they said, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't. And I'll say one last time. I don't like to crap on something like many people. I'm not saying you guys. I'm just saying we've been talking about this. A lot of people decided this was terrible before they even saw it. But so I do want to sort of defend the concept a little bit. But, at face value, I think we can all agree that it missed the mark.
But I found it very sweet, and I could see the love for the property there, and I respect that.
I didn't honestly. I'm not being contrarian here. I didn't even see the love for what the Munsters were. That's my point. It's supposed to be this thing that he loves so much, and it was like you've mishandled everything about it and all the characters. So I don't know. I didn't see lovingly portrayed, what made Herman kind of charming in the show, and her kind of, oh, Herman, now come on, being in charge, and even the relationship between her and Grandpa was weird. Like none of it felt like the show. And
the thing is, the conceit was, I know you guys know this, but the conceit was they took the brain of a guy who told bad jokes,
yes,
who already was sort of ridiculed for being, terrible on stage or whatever.
Yeah.
He killed himself on stage because he was heckled so much. I can't remember what it was, but
yeah.
But using that brain for your main character, where it's just a steady stream of bad jokes from the guy that we wish wasn't around anyway. That's, I think, one of the big problems. But I will say, I really did, if I wanted to say I enjoyed one thing with as much as I did see, I could see Rob Zombie really getting into the part where he's in like this cavern club punk band. And I did like that part. And I liked when he was telling jokes and rocking out.
When they show the comedian before he dies, it's the same dude in a dime store wig, glasses, and like big buck teeth going, oh, well, I'll tell you something. What happens when you go to the thing? Like that's on the screen as the newscaster's telling the story about this comic. It's just, it's bizarre. But I will say this. If I'm going to say something good, I'll say this. It's better than that Marilyn Monroe film on Netflix called Blonde.
I haven't. I'm afraid to. I will. I wanted to see it, and now I'm afraid to go near it based on what people are saying.
Just atrocious and exploitation and just disgusting. And I can't. And that movie's 2 hours and 45 minutes, and I couldn't finish that either. But it is beyond belief bad. So the Munsters is better. Put it that way.
Well, I'm sure they'll put that on the DVD.
Yeah, that'll be on the box.
Exactly.
My special box.
Pundit Jason Lindsay says it's an abomination.
I believe he's a wag.
It's an abomination, but it's better than that Marilyn Monroe thing. All right, there you go.
I was talking about the Marilyn Monroe box.
Oh, yeah.
All right. There you go.
But, guys, it's an absolute pleasure, and I hate to depart early.
Trip. No worries, man.
I can see my family staring at me through my wall. So
say hi for us.
Yeah. But I appreciate an opportunity to plug In Search of Darkness Part 3 at 80shorrordoc.com. But regardless of any excuse to sit with you, whether it's to plug a movie or just to hang out, I'm always honored to be third chair when you guys allow me to, and it's always fun socially to hang out with guys who know what the hell I'm talking about, and vice versa. Because I don't have that social life these days, so it's nice.
You're always welcome here, sir.
Yeah, thank you for making the time. Always welcome. We'll do it again.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. I guess that's our look at the Munsters, and I want to say thanks to David and Jason, as always, but you're both wrong. It was an okay film. Actually, you know what? I'll hang up on both of you and just do a rant after.
In all seriousness, it would, if we all agreed that it was bad, then it's not fun. And
no, absolutely. And I knew this was going to be conflict. After I watched it, I was like, I was all right. I mean, it wasn't the greatest thing ever.
But to be fair, and I say this in the most loving way possible, Brian does like the underdog, and Brian does like stuff that's not polished and put together. You have a soft spot for those things, and
absolutely.
I listened to part of an episode a while back where I asked about Constantine, the TV show. You hated it. You hated the guy. You couldn't take his voice. And the next thing that came up was Popeye. And I was trashing Popeye. And you go, oh, I love Popeye.
You know what, guys? I watched Transylvania 65000 last night. I
love Popeye. So
I watched it twice with commentary and without.
You're talking about Robert Altman's Popeye?
Yes.
Yeah. I'll just say one thing, and then I really do have to go. But I just remember seeing that in the theater, and I remember being very excited because I watch Popeye cartoons all the time, and I just did not understand why he didn't want or like spinach. Like it just went over my head that was a joke. I was just like, why do we have to wait till the end for the big spinach fight? You know, I didn't get it.
I mean, Brian likes the songs in Popeye. Even Harry Nilsson didn't like the songs in Popeye, and he wrote them.
Well, what's the song? What's the song? He loves me, or he, that.
But he's large. But he's large.
I don't like all the songs in Popeye.
Well, there's one sweet love song that Olive Oil sings, that Shelley Duvall sings, that I think is sweet. He loves me, or something like that. And anyway,
that's kind of who Brian is. So Brian tends to. When everyone else goes left, he goes, well, but it wasn't that bad. So I kind of expected that. But I can no longer pull my punches.
The movie ends. Okay, I will say something negative. The movie has like a stupid ending.
Well, at least you got to the ending. Congratulations.
Yeah, I did. And I won't tell you guys what it is because I want to keep you in suspense. But you go, really? That's how it ends? That's weird.
I did hear something about this, that it just abruptly ends or something, and you go,
you just sort of go, really? That's like it has that plot of every sitcom movie of the 90s where some, like the Beverly Hillbillies, or someone's trying to rip them off, and they get ripped off, and then there's redemption at the end, but the redemption comes from a really bit of lazy writing. Like, you're just like, really? That's how it ends? Like,
mark my words, someday the truth is going to come out about this movie, because it ain't supposed to have been exactly what it was. Someday we're going to find out.
I think it was made to keep the property.
I think you might be right, man. I think that's a pretty good assumption. It would make a lot of fucking sense.
Yeah. Gents, on that note, I'm going to say big adieu.
Thank you both. Alrighty.
Thanks, guys.
This
was a real blast.
Happy spooky season, everybody. Thank you so
Halloween,
much.
Guys.
Happy Halloween.
Bye.